moving from the oral cavity and teeth back or posterior down into the throat. Now from this diagram, you can still see there is the tongue here. We have the nasal cavity we're not really dealing with. We're trying to focus on the back here, this purple and green. You'll notice that we have the nasopharynx up top, but we'll get to that in the respiratory chapter. Want to focus on the oropharynx here and the laryngopharynx here. That's the main things we'll start with. Because that oropharynx and that laryngopharynx are going to be stratified squamous epithelium. They're meant to be protected, just like the oral cavity. Because the things you're eating, they're sometimes on the sharper side. I think eating sharp, what are you talking about? Ever eat chips, pretzels? There's various different things that are on the drier side that can be sharp as you chew them. They can cut your lining. So the stratified squamous is meant to try and protect the tubing, protect the mucosal lining here. Now from the oropharynx to the laryngopharynx, we go down to the esophagus. The esophagus is the muscular tubing that goes from the pharynx up top down to the stomach below. It literally is just a passage for food from point A to point B. That's all it's doing. It's going to pierce the diaphragm at the esophageal hiatus. It's kind of a structural point there that allows it to go through. It joins the stomach at the cardiac orifice. And at this point, there is going to be a sphincter we'll get to in a little bit. So that sphincter helps control the backflow out of the stomach because you don't want things going from the stomach back up. While there is stratified squamous coming down this tube, it's not meant to handle the acidity that's found in the stomach. So the esophagus itself, as mentioned, is stratified squamous, but interesting as I said, changes to simple columnar. Why would you want to change simple columnar at the stomach? I say, hold on, it was nice and protective. Think about the esophagus. It's a thin tube coming down. A lot of things are rubbing on the edges. But then the stomach opens up. You don't have the same abrasion on the edges. So therefore, you can change over to simple columnar for more secretions. The esophageal glands in the submucosa are secreting mucus all the way down the entire esophagus. The idea is helping to lubricate the passageway, making sure that bolus of food keeps on moving, doesn't get stuck. Now, there are some foods that doesn't really help out much with. Sometimes, if you're eating peanut butter, for example, maybe you swallow a little too much peanut butter and feel it slowly working its way down. That's because this mucus doesn't really help to coat the peanut butter very well. And it just sticks to the walls of the esophagus. So most things it works great for, but you gotta make sure you're mixing things up in the mouth first before you swallow them to not get those weird feelings. The muscularis, how is the esophagus controlled? Well, superiorly, it starts off as skeletal up top, and then it changes over to smooth muscle as you come down. The idea is, under skeletal control up in the throat, you're having a little bit of control up in the pharynx when you first are swallowing back. There's some skeletal muscle, but that changes to smooth muscle the entire rest of the way. The adventitia is the outside tunic, so the most exterior tunic from the pharynx to diaphragm. Once you pass the diaphragm, then it's serosa. So again, remember, the esophagus is the only one of the GI organs that has both serosa and adventitia because it's below and above the diaphragm. So here's a quick view of the 4 different tunics of the esophagus. You have the mucosa, that's the inside portion. Now again, of the esophagus, that's stratified squamous. You have the submucosa, which will have those mucosal glands. That helps with mucus secretion. You have the muscularis externa. This is both circular and longitudinal layers. And then you'll have adventitia for the majority of it. And then once you go through the diaphragm, change it over to serosa. And once you are under the diaphragm, remember you're joining with the stomach. Right here, that is the junction point. You can see the change in the tissue. Mucosa goes from simple columnar in the stomach from stratified squamous of the esophagus. So this nice thick chunk is stratified squamous and changes over immediately there to simple columnar. Esophagus to stomach. Because in the stomach, it opens up, larger cavity. You don't have to worry about the abrasion on the walls as much anymore. So what digestive processes of those 6 are occurring in the esophagus? Well, mouth to esophagus, you have ingestion, obviously. You ingest the food. Mechanical digestion. Yeah, you're chewing, you're mixing, you're pushing. In the esophagus, it's squeezing, peristalsis going down. Chemical digestion. Well, yeah, you've got that lingual lipase, you have that salivary amylase. Salivary amylase starts right off in the mouth. Lingual lipase starts off a little later on. And propulsion, swallowing, deglutition. So we have a lot of different processes happening from mouth into the point of esophagus. Now that deglutition, that swallowing, there's more than one phase to it. It's not just a simple, hey, it happens, that's it, it's done. I'm willing to bet you probably never even think about swallowing for the most part. And now you're sitting there, hold on, swallowing, what happens, what goes on? Swallowing, obviously you need the tongue, soft palate, back of your mouth, pharynx, back of the throat, esophagus, and only 22 other muscle groups. So if you're thinking we're going through 22 different muscle groups right now, don't worry about it, we're not. Just the key is it's a lot of integration, a lot of components all working together to make this swallowing work. And that's why sometimes it doesn't work smoothly. There's a little problem or hiccup because something happens in this whole process that doesn't quite move smoothly. So you start off with the voluntary phase, known as the buccal phase. Voluntary phase is what's in the actual oral cavity. It's when you're taking your tongue and pushing the food back. You're thinking about it. It's not happening automatically. So you think about, I should chew enough, I'm going to swallow now. That's the voluntary phase. You then have the pharyngeal phase. Think pharynx, back of the throat. Pharyngeal phase is involuntary. So once that food hits the back of your throat, you don't have control anymore. Because at that point, you're blocking your air passage. You're going to continue on, your body knows what has to happen. So what's going on here is the medulla and part of the pons are now initiating this process and controlling it. You're closing off your respiratory passages, which means the uvula is pushed up, food can't go up. You then also have, in the throat, you're going to have what going through here? You have your epiglottis closing down, blocking the passage to your lungs. You're trying to make sure that there's no food traveling either way, up or down the air passage. Then you're in the esophageal phase. Esophageal, we're heading down the esophagus, makes sense. In the esophageal phase, it is involuntary, and it's still controlled medulla and lower pons. Same as the previous one. So your brainstem, your base vital functions of your brainstem are controlling this involuntary swallowing mechanism. The pharyngeal and now the esophageal phase. But now we have peristalsis occurring. Peristalsis is the squeezing of the actual muscular tube, so that's the esophagus here, squeezing and pushing that food down. Squeeze and push. So it's meant to propel that bolus, that chunk of food, down towards your stomach. So you go from the buccal phase, voluntary, pharyngeal phase, involuntary, esophageal phase, involuntary. So put that into pictures. Bolus is up front. That's still on the tongue. That's still the voluntary phase. You then push it back into the pharynx. Now we're in the involuntary phase. You can see here that both the uvula, which is up top, as well as the epiglottis here, which is folded over, they're both blocking the air passages, making sure it's not going to the wrong place. We then are in the esophageal phase, heading down here through peristalsis. Keep on heading down, we're heading to the stomach. Peristalsis, pushing it all the way down. Eventually, it reaches the stomach. It passes the sphincter right here. That's the gastroesophageal sphincter, also known as the lower esophageal sphincter, also known as the cardiac sphincter. Yeah, it's got a bunch of names, but they're all referring to the same sphincter, the one that is preventing backflow from the stomach up to the esophagus. So that's what we're looking at for the pharynx and the esophagus as far as movement of food and the processes.